Hey there, welcome climbers around the world. I'm Eric Hörst, coming live to you from my home, and I'm happy to be here for the second episode of the Training Cafe. If you're watching, well, then you're likely a climber interested in training, and just maybe, like me, you enjoy CAFÉ. And if so, let's have a sip and get rolling here with the Training Cafe. You know, this is something I've been thinking about doing for a long time, probably a couple of years. And I have a lot of other endeavors underway. You know, I have a website, I write books, I do monthly podcasts. And so getting around to doing a live vodcast or video like this has just been something I haven't done, had the time to do, or was compelled to do. But, you know, this COVID-19 crisis that the world is facing, and here in the United States, we're on a pretty much mandatory stay-at-home order right now. Causes us to, change up our routine. And for me, gave me the opportunity to do something new. And maybe this is some good that comes out of this crisis, is that I kind of committed to starting to do these Training Cafe videos. And I'm going to try to do them twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays for the next few weeks. And, when we get back to normalcy and climbing outside and traveling, I'll be doing these less frequently, but it's hopefully a way that I can be engaged and communicate more directly face-to-face with you folks and share a good cup of coffee. And I guess in the future, also try to be more interactive and answer questions that are coming in. And I haven't quite figured out how to best do that yet. I don't know if I'll get there today. But if you leave a question, maybe I can leave something as a comment after the podcast if there's a specific training question that you do have. So in any case, what's on tap today in the next 20 to 30 minutes? First, just kind of want to talk briefly about the crisis that's ongoing and what we can do as climbers just to kind of help the situation, be part of the solution, not part of the problem, as they say. And then we're going to take that middle segment and talk about hangboard training, because I think there's probably been more hangboards sold in the last 2 weeks around the world than maybe in the last 2 years. Because if you're stuck at home, or let's say safe at home, you need to, of course, find a physical outlet. And fingerboard training is a good way for climbers to do that and to kind of stay in shape and hopefully get maybe even in better shape when it comes to your finger flexor muscles for the return to climbing, which I hope is not too far away. And then in the final part of the vodcast, briefly going to talk about using this time for something else beyond climbing, being future oriented. Just kind of like how this podcast or this video cast was born out of this crisis in a sense. Maybe there's something great like that, or some new direction that you will find yourself on when the lockdown or stay-at-home order is over. And so in any case, we are in crazy times here. We're being asked to social distance. And I think maybe the better term is physical distance, because socially we're as connected as ever in this situation. So I feel like socially we're much closer together. That's a beautiful thing that I'm interacting with climbers around the world right now. I've done that for many years through my books and through my podcasts and through email, but this is a unique situation here that we can dialogue. And certainly with something like Instagram, there are countless climbers around the world sharing their at-home training strategies. That's a great thing. It gives us lots of fresh ideas, and kind of shows that we're all in the same boat and how we're dealing with this. And climbing is really neat because the pro climbers are so accessible. I don't think it's like that with the big sports like football in America, or soccer, or other sports. The pros are so separate and almost larger than life, yes, but also distant, not touchable. But climbing is a great sport because not only can we go to the crags or the gyms and see the rock stars, and many of them are very cordial and friendly to regular climbers, but the rock stars are on Instagram and on other social medias, and you're able to interact in a small way, but still a powerful way. I heard somebody say the other day that, engagement is the new cocaine. And that's an interesting concept. But yeah, we are kind of, as a society, getting hooked on this engagement. And when used positively, it can be a beautiful thing that enriches our lives and informs our lives and allows us to do what we're doing here right now. And the climbing media community's done a great job as well. The magazines and websites. And I actually wanted to give this episode's shout out to the website 8a.nu. I'm a user of 8a. I enjoy the site. And, at this time, they're doing a wonderful job on a daily basis, kind of documenting how climbers are being affected around the world, because it does vary country to country. 8A gives good insight into the World Cup climbing situation and the Olympics. There's good commentary and coverage there. And so even if you're not into that kind of thing, if you're just a recreational climber, check out 8a.nu, because I think their news feed and their coverage of the COVID crisis in climbing, it's been well done. And I think it's a good website for other purposes, like tracking your outdoor ascents. And even now, I think they're beginning to get indoor gyms to integrate into their system. And so the Vertical Life app and such is something you probably want to check out at some point down the road. So there's my shout out for this episode. So in any case, I think, kind of one expression I've been using on the internet recently is making lemonade out of lemons. That's a common saying here in the United States. I don't know if you're all familiar with that, but if the COVID crisis and our lockdown at home is the lemon, well, then squeezing the lemon and sweetening it and making some lemonade that is actually pleasant to drink. That's kind of a metaphor, I guess, for us trying to make the best of this situation at home and doing the things we're doing when it comes to training for climbing, to stay in shape and stay positive and stay motivated. And in the first training cafe, I kind of gave some oversight on like a larger training for climbing program, how I think everybody should be doing 2 workouts a day, one that takes you outside and then one that's more strength oriented inside. If you didn't see episode 1, go back and watch it to get that coverage. Today, I'm going to get more into hangboard training protocols, and we'll do that in just a couple more minutes. So hang on there. But the final thing I wanted to say, I think, we are overwhelmed by the media coverage, which at least here in the United States has been apocalyptic for the last few weeks. And not that this isn't a bad crisis. It is. There are now, I think, over 1,000 people dying a day. In the United States, it's still growing. We're 2 to 4 weeks away from it hopefully cresting and then beginning to go downhill. Other countries are in different spots in that curve. And so it's kind of uncharted territory, but I'm thinking hopefully that, after 2 to 4 weeks of it getting worse, then it starts to improve and maybe we get back to some normalcy by early summer. And I'm praying that I can be outdoor climbing by late spring or early summer. But right now, I'm doing my part in staying at home. And I think all climbers should be doing the same thing to slow the spread and be good global citizens and make lemons out of lemonade by just trying to train at home and engage people in a positive way. And so the language that we use, the words that we have in our self-talk in our head, and just the way we talk about this crisis, instead of saying that you're stuck at home, why not reframe that and say you're safe at home? Because staying in your house where you're not coming in contact with people is the safest thing for us all to do right now. And instead of saying, this situation sucks and other negative comments, and it does, why not, again, try to reframe that and talk about it being a challenging situation that we're facing. Kind of like a mountaineer that's in a bad situation. If they want to survive it, they can't be negative. They have to be realistic and objective, but also view it as a challenge and how they can overcome that challenge. That's the only way you can act, productively and have a chance of coming out of it safe and sound. And so reframing things in a positive way is a good psychological trick to deal with any adverse situation. So, instead of saying that this lock at home or stay at home order is ruining my spring climbing season, which it is, but instead of thinking that way, I'm kind of reframing it as it's an opportunity to do something new, which I'm trying to do through these video broadcasts. And for you, trying to maybe open up some new doors or new direction in your life, which I'll talk about at the very end of this podcast. So the bottom line, in these crazy, fearful situations, whenever you're dealing with adversity, survival begins with a positive mindset. Embracing the realism of the situation, yes, but also thinking positively, being hopeful. And it's from exhibiting courage and imagination and determination that you will come through it, and we will all come through this hopefully stronger than ever. And I guess being grateful. If you are healthy today listening to this video, then you're better off than a lot of folks who have come down with the illness. And I'm hearing every day now about people in the 30s, 40s, and 50s dying from COVID-19. And that brings it home to us because, we were told a month or two ago that only older people died from this. And while that is the main demographic being affected, and those with pre-existing conditions, I've heard an example of a 30-year-old here in New Jersey, not far from me, who was a completely healthy young man, age 30, who came down with the illness and died 5 days later. And that's frightening. So indeed, this, is something to be taken seriously and be dealt with. So again, we need to stay at home and do our part. Okay, so enough with the COVID-19. Let's move on and talk about some training. And I want to today go through hangboard training protocols because hangboard training seems like a pretty simple topic. You just hang with your fingers and you get pumped or you get stressed and that's it. And while it might seem like a simple topic, it's actually a very complex topic because there are a range of protocols over a broad continuum that trains everything from maximum grip strength to aerobic endurance. And while this has been covered in my Training for Climbing book and in many coaches and have written done podcasts and articles on this topic, it's, I guess, not been well communicated, how to differentiate between one training protocol and another and what it's going to do for you. And so while it's a topic I could talk for a few hours on, I want to try to give like the 10-minute brief digest version of it. And then you can maybe do a little bit more studying on your own to drill down. And I guess my hope is just that you can hangboard train a little more intelligently. If you're just randomly hangboarding and not sure what you're doing, the results that you get will be uncertain. Hangboard is a training instrument that can injure you, especially if you're locked up at home with your hangboard and you're doing it every single day, intense hangboard training. That will get you injured. So you need to recognize that rest is just as important. So that is kind of where I want to go here. But first, I've had some people messaging both the first episode and this episode saying, we want to see your basement. We want to see the famous Hörst training compound, which is in our house here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And right now we're lucky to have it. Even though it's a beautiful, sunny, cool day outside, I'd rather be on the cliffs. We can't do that, so we are training at home. So I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment here. I hope so far the Wi-Fi has handled the stream and the audio and video has been going well. Somebody give me a comment here, a thumbs up that it's been good so far. I'm a little worried about bandwidth issues and whether this live stream is coming off okay to you folks. And what I'm going to do here for just a 1-minute break is disconnect from the power and see if my Wi-Fi will hold up as we take a quick walk through our home gym. So I'm going to just power down here for a moment. The video should continue broadcasting. Well, Okay, I think it dropped out there for a short time, but let's see if we can hold this together. Someone, please comment if we're having issues. Hey, by the way, there is El Capitan, the nose of El Cap right over my shoulder. Okay, so we're just going to take a little walk here, and let's hope that our Wi-Fi holds up. Down into the dungeon. And first I will show you, this is our treadwall room. There is the J Beast. Jonathan cranking some mileage on the treadwall. And then here we go into the pain room, the Skinner box. We have a lot of different names for it. There is Cam Hörst doing some training. And today we're going to talk about hangboards. We got some hangboards in this gym. As you can see, there's this lockboard. And actually, there's probably more than a dozen hangboards in our home gym. So let's talk about some hangboard training. You definitely don't need 12 hangboards, but I test a lot of boards for companies over the years, and I like to mix up my training, especially if I'm doing like endurance protocols, like repeaters. It's nice to have different boards to select holds from. And but all you need is one to get a good workout. And you know what? Even if you don't have a hangboard, you know, there are other options that I'm sure you have come up with, like in my formative days right here, fingertip pull-ups above the door jamb. That works in a pinch. But if you can get your hands on a hangboard of any kind, wood, plastic, you name it, then that'll be a little more functional for you. A board with a variety of holds. And let me just get hooked back up here. Get a little more light on the subject, which is me. Okay, and let's talk training. So obviously a hangboard is used to target the finger flexor muscles. And this is a complex group of muscles that controls your fingers. And there's flexor tendons that attach to the middle and distal phalanx of each finger. And so every different grip position recruits the muscles a little differently. Also, different grip positions place different stresses on the various pulleys in your fingers. Of course, that A2 pulley, especially in your non-dominant ring finger, they can be injured, and that's the most commonly injured finger, though you can even injure a pinky or A4 pulley. And so those are the types of pains and things you want to watch out for when you're hangboard training or just climbing. Stress, too much stress, too little rest is a recipe for tendon injuries. And so you need to balance the training load, which loading will make your tendons and ligaments stronger very slowly over the course of months and years. But too much loading degrades the collagen structure. You get little tears and disturbances that without rest and proper nutrition, protein is very important for connective tissues. And so you need to balance the loading, the training, with the rest and the nutrition. And if you have too much loading and too little rest and nutrition, well, then there's a perturbation in homeostasis, and that sends you down this road of weakening collagen fibers, and eventually you can get an acute tear. When you tear a pulley, it's not that specific move that is to blame when it popped, but everything that led up to that kind of weakened the structure and predisposed it to becoming injured at that moment. So that's a whole nother topic to be discussed. And actually, I've done a series of podcasts on tendons and ligaments and collagen synthesis and how you can strengthen your connective tissues. If you go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and search Eric Hörst's Training for Climbing podcast, episodes number 33 to 36 and episode 39 all address those topics of connective tissues and injuries and how training affects these structures. It's a fascinating topic that's hardly been touched, but it's something I've done a lot of my own research on in recent years, and I've begun writing about and podcasting about. And there's a few other people out there that have become knowledgeable on it. Tyler Nelson, my friend from Salt Lake City, is someone who's studied this as part of his master's degree. And it's a topic that I think there's going to be more communicated to climbers on the connective tissue implications of training and nutrition and injuries and such in the coming years. So that's a whole developing topic, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now and instead talk about hangboard training. So in any case, on any given day when you're hangboard training, you need to ask yourself, are you training strength or endurance? There's kind of two different protocols. If you want to train strength, well, then you need to be grabbing small holds or at least difficult holds where you would only hang for 10 seconds or less. So any brief hang that is high in intensity, followed by a long rest period, that would be a strength training protocol. So the common ones that are out there, Eva Lopez has popularized and has done some nice research on hangboard training. And her protocol is to do a 10-second hang, which should be near maximal, and then rest for 3 minutes. And then you can repeat that a few times. And you can train, obviously, different grips. You could train pocket grip. You could train half crimp. And I believe, the bulk of your training should focus on the half crimp grip. You should never fingerboard train closed crimp with your thumb. That you do not want to do. Half crimp, full crimp, half crimp, and even some open hand and pocket grip are all different positions to train that stress the muscles and also the connective tissues a little differently with each grip. My favorite maximum strength protocol that I promoted in Training for Climbing 3rd edition is the 753 protocol. And that's where you hang for 7 seconds, rest for 53 seconds, and repeat that 3 times in a row. So 753, 753, 753. So you're doing 3 7-second hangs over a 3-minute period. And then you rest for another 3 minutes before you repeat. So it's a little more stressful protocol. It's very alactic. So it's training that maximum strength energy system. And I find it's like the next step up from doing the 10-second hangs followed by 3-second rest. So those are both maximum strength protocols. And if you're a beginner, you would only want to do a few sets of that, 3, 4, 5 hangs total of the 10-second hangs. When you get to the 753s, you might do 3 sets of those 3 hangs, focusing on 3 different grips. But an elite climber might do as many as 6 or 8 or 10 sets of those hangs. So, like any sports training, the more advanced, the more elite you are, you need more training stimulus to bring about further adaptations. You have to, over time, over years, very gradually ramp up the stimulus to keep ramping up the adaptations to higher and higher levels. Now, if a beginner tries to do pro-like volumes, that again is a prescription for injury. Again, a beginner should do just a small amount of hangboard training and have plenty of rest. Whereas an elite climber might be doing some type of hangboard training 4 days a week in addition to other types of climbing. And I can't get into the nuance of exercise prescription here, how you dovetail climbing wall training and hangboard training together. That's way beyond the scope of this podcast, and it really needs to be personalized. So I'm a big fan of engaging a coach when you can to help you out with that exercise prescription. Or, after a few years, if you read a lot and study a lot and listen a lot to people who know what they're talking about, you can become an effective self-coach. Okay, so we talked about the maximum strength protocols. What about endurance? Well, there's 2 types of endurance to train. There's the anaerobic endurance, which is what gets you pumped when you're occluding blood flow repeatedly, and you're using more that anaerobic lactic energy system. That is what is called anaerobic endurance versus endurance that lasts for many minutes, where it's much a lower load endurance, where you can train or climb for several minutes in a row without getting severely pumped, without failing. That trains the aerobic energy system. And aerobic endurance is very important for route climbers. And I believe it's best trained on a climbing wall by doing routes, the different route climbing protocols. But that's not an option for you right now. So let's talk about what you can do at home on a hangboard in terms of training anaerobic endurance and then aerobic endurance. So that anaerobic endurance energy system dominates when you're doing strenuous exercise, in this case hangboarding or climbing, that lasts between about 20 seconds and 45 to 60 seconds. By 60 seconds, if you're doing something for 60 seconds sustained, even if it's intermittent for 60 seconds, like repeaters, that increasingly is working the aerobic energy system. So the sweet spot for anaerobic endurance training is really, 20 to 40 seconds. If you get on a steep bouldering wall and just do hard moves, maximal moves for 20 to 40 seconds, something that powers you out at 20 seconds or pumps you out at 40 seconds, that is not pure, but it's mostly anaerobic lactic energy system training. There's always a little bit of alactic and a little bit of aerobic. All three energy systems are always contributing some, but between 20 to 40 seconds of intense climbing, that is mostly anaerobic lactic energy system. So if you're doing like bouldering 4x4 repeats on a wall, that is really targets that anaerobic lactic system. And it's somewhat, or actually increasingly aerobic as the session goes on. But on a hangboard, if you're doing a repeater protocol, like the 7-3 repeater protocol, where you hang for 7 seconds, rest, shake for 3 seconds, then right back on, hanging 7 seconds, shake for 3 seconds. Repeat that 6 times. So it's a 1-minute protocol that trains the anaerobic lactic energy system. And during those brief micro rests, those 3-second rests, a little bit of blood gets flowing and there's a little bit of oxphos going on. The mitochondria are able to utilize some oxygen to create some ATP. So there's little bursts of oxidative system contribution during those 3-second repeats, but it's mainly anaerobic lactic protocol, a great protocol for both boulderers and sport climbers. So that's our go-to. And again, a beginner might do just 3 to 5 sets of repeaters. And now because it is endurance, you do need a little more volume. So I would say if you're a total beginner on hangboards, you might do 3 sets of 7-3 repeaters. Again, 7-3 times 6, 1 minute, then rest, say 2 minutes, and then do another set, 1 minute repeater, rest 2 minutes, another set, and that's it. 3 full sets of repeaters if you're a beginner. An intermediate, probably 5 to 10 sets. And if you keep doing them back to back with just a minute or 2 of rest in between, it's almost like doing a long climb. So that's pretty good. And if you're an elite, you might do as many as 20 sets of these repeaters, where you do maybe 3 sets in a row that targets a specific pocket grip. And then the next 3 sets shift to maybe, kind of like a half crimp or open crimp grip. And then do, and every 3 sets keep switching the grip up, or every set switch the grip up. That's why I like having all the hangboards that we have in our basement, because every set of repeaters, we move to another hangboard and we kind of go through a sequence and work the different grips. So anything that you're working hard and getting pumped on that is relatively brief in duration is more that anaerobic lactic energy system. Finally, there's training that more caters to recruiting the aerobic energy system, generating ATP by the mitochondria. And that is what sustains you on long, hard climbs. Even if the climb has hard bouldering moves on it, if you're on the route for minutes, many minutes, then you need a very strong aerobic energy system. I did a breakdown of Adam Ondra climbing silence, which is, of course, one of the most amazing videos ever. And I propose that Adam generated more ATP, was powered more by the oxidative energy system than the glycolytic pathway. The nature of the route being so long and so sustained, and the fact that he spent more time resting on the route than he did climbing, is evidence that it was all about, in his case, he needed to do hard moves, which were alactic and very anaerobic. But the aerobic energy system, without it being at world-class levels for a climber, that route wasn't going to go down. And so climbing a lot of routes is obviously one way to train that aerobic system. But at home on a hangboard, about the best you can do is what is called moving hangs. And you need to train at less than body weight to really effectively train the aerobic energy system. Because for most climbers, unless you're really strong, if you're hanging at body weight, you're occluding blood flow. To not occlude blood flow so that the oxidative system can be working throughout, you need to be hanging at around 30% or less than your maximum voluntary contraction. And so if you struggle to hold, say, a 10 millimeter edge at body weight, well, then you can't train on that hold really and train the aerobic energy system. It's going to be anaerobic training. So you need to go to larger holds, but ideally use smaller holds, but at reduced body weight. And so you do that by using a counterweight system, or something as simple as putting your feet on a chair, or putting footholds on the wall behind your hangboard, if you have a setup like that, where you can get a good part of your body weight over your feet and off your hands, so that then you can move your hands around the hangboard. And yes, this will get boring after doing it for 2 to 4 minutes, but put on a good song and visualize climbing outside and move around your hangboard for 2 to 4 minutes. And again, to be able to stay on there and moving like a climb, moving your hands every 5 seconds or so. To be able to do that, you're going to need to use some larger holds and maybe do some shaking out, but also get some weight removed from your body. There are some new training tools in the works that will help facilitate workouts like this in the future and help you be more precise at knowing what percent of your maximum voluntary contraction that you're training at. But I'll have to address those devices at a later time. And, certainly it's a rich topic to talk about training and testing maximum grip strength, and then how training at different percentages of that maximum finger force can be a very effective strategy for accurately targeting a specific energy system. Again, I've been talking for years through my book and through my podcasts about how you just can't train effectively by doing a lot of everything. If you're dabbling and doing a wide range of things, it might create fatigue, but it won't create a stronger climber in the long run, and it may get you injured. So the more you understand training protocols, the more you understand your weaknesses and then train in ways that address your weaknesses. And the more you understand the need for rest and nutrition to balance out your training stress and all the loading that you're doing to your muscles and tendons, that will empower you to get stronger year over year and hopefully stay injured throughout. And, injuries set a lot of climbers back. And I guess that's where I kind of want to wrap up this discussion of hangboard training, is a couple of guidelines or even disclaimers. First disclaimer is, if you are currently injured, if you have a fresh injury, something that is painful or tender, you probably shouldn't be hangboard training at all. You should be doing rehab, or if it's a real fresh injury in the last week, you should be just getting some total rest. And maybe even seeing a doctor or a PT if you're unsure what your injury is. If you have an injury that's been healing, that might be still a little painful to climb on or painful to touch, you can do some hangboard training, though I would not do maximum load training. I would do more low intensity things like the moving hangs, or maybe some repeaters that aren't so stressful. And you want to train in the open hand position, because that is more forgiving to the annular pulleys than is a half crimp grip. You want to stay away from the half crimp grip and probably do some prophylactic taping to stay aware of the situation. But if you have a healing injury, loading is a good thing, but it's got to be appropriate loading. It can't be an all-in to your old training program that got you injured. It needs to be a gradual step up so that you can support the healing process. And if you're a true beginner and you're stuck indoors and you're really missing climbing, I know it's going to be tempting to go all in on a hangboard training program and do it every day. But trust me, that's been tried by countless climbers, and it will end in injury. If you're loading your tendons and pulleys on a daily basis, if you're new to climbing, those structures aren't strong enough yet. It takes 5 to 7 years for tendon hypertrophy to actually grow a thicker tendon. And they will get stronger and thicker over time, but it is a very gradual process. And again, I could get into specific protocols for strengthening tendons, but I'm already past 30 minutes, and so I don't want to get too long-winded here. So we'll save that for another day. But again, if you revisit my Training for Climbing podcast, there's like about 4 hours of content on that topic that you can revisit. Okay, so let's move on to the final part of this podcast. And again, I'm sorry that I can't take questions from you today. I haven't quite figured out how to do that effectively and not stop the show to read your comments. But I'll get that figured out, and we'll do some more engagement one-on-one in the future. And like I said, when I'm done, maybe I can answer some questions here over the messenger. But the final part here, just to kind of wrap things up on a very positive note, is while here in the United States, in my state, I'm on mandatory stay-at-home until the end of April, and of course that could be extended. Every state in the United States is a little different. I think in Virginia, it's like June 10th. It's a real distant. And in Wyoming, maybe there's no restriction. So in any case, it's a little different for all of us around the world. But I think for most of us, the month of April should be spent at home. And if that's you, then why not kind of make this the April that is a difference, the most unique April of your life. And yes, it's a bummer that we're not out climbing, but we're going to train and we're going to get through this together by staying positive, by staying motivated. And I'm going to propose to you investing a few hours a day, maybe 2 to 4 hours a day, into something completely new, something completely different. And I'm not talking about training. I'm talking about something that opens a new door in your life. A skill you can develop, a topic you can study. I know I've been talking to my one son about learning video editing. So this would be a great month to go all in, watch YouTube tutorials, and become a pro at video editing. Probably in 1 month, you can get pretty good at video editing and develop a skill that you have for life. Or maybe learn to play the guitar, or maybe become an expert on some topic that you're interested in, but you've never had the time to read in depth or study in depth online. Why not invest 2 to 4 hours a day into something new that will develop your talent stack? I really am a big believer that, to be really future oriented and grow your life, to not know exactly where you're going to be a decade or two from now or what you're going to be doing, the more talents you can build and stack on top of each other, the better in this new economy, this new world we live in. The days of doing one profession for 40 years and retiring from the profession you started at age 20, those days are largely gone. And we're in an era now where there's so much potential to do unique and interesting things and build a life around something that you love, a passion. But you need to be multi-talented to do that. And so to invest a few hours a day into doing something new, writing a book, starting a podcast, building a website, and it doesn't have to be electronic. It could be something else. But I think this is a time in your life that could be seminal, that opens a new potential path for you. What is the alternative? If you're at home 23 hours a day, again, I think you should spend 1 hour a day outside in the sun, exercising or going for a walk and thinking. If you're inside the other 23 hours of the day, you can't spend all the time training. You can't spend all the time sleeping, nor do you want to. You might spend some time doing passive entertainment, like we've been doing a little bit of Netflix here, catching up on Prison Break, a show I'd never seen in my life until a week ago, and it's pretty good. So we watch 1 or 2 episodes of that a day on Netflix. But you don't want to watch 10 hours of Netflix. You don't want to, spend 10 hours a day scrolling through Instagram. What a waste of a life that would be. In small doses, yes. In large doses, no. And so it's going to take a little bit of discipline and a little bit of vision and perhaps maturity to put down the phone, to sign off the computer, and invest some time into something that can contribute to your life going forward. There's nothing I'm going to see on Instagram today that's going to be life-changing for me, I don't think. And while it is great to connect with people and to be informed through social media and through what we're doing here, to spend the next month just doing this type of stuff, as tempting and addictive as it may be, would be really a waste of a month. So that's my challenge to you, is to try to identify what something new you can do to make April great again. And I guess that's about all I want to say there. You can kind of use your imagination, hopefully, and figure out, given where you're at and what you have available to you, what that might be. What could be that thing you've been thinking about? Like me in this training cafe, I've been thinking about it for a few years. It took this crisis. It took until this past Monday for me to actually start doing it. And hopefully it'll turn into something good. I hope you guys can appreciate that. And so I'm at about 40 minutes here. I went over, but that is kind of my MO sometimes. And hopefully someday, a dear friend, we'll get to meet in person and have some coffee together, or shake hands at the cliff once we're allowed to shake hands again. And I'm always delighted to meet climbers around the world, because we are a small family, and we, regardless of our nationality or background or age, you name it, we have this shared passion of climbing that connects us, connects me to you. And I'm delighted to share that with you here on the Training Cafe. And so that's it for today. Until next time, Hörst out.